This is Com Trues, and you're watching I Think I Like It on UTV.
Hello, man. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Very good. You've begun your European tour 2 days ago. How are you feeling?
Pretty good. Both shows were maybe amazing. A little tired because I had just ended a U.S. tour about 45 days the same day that I flew to start the European tour. So it's been a little crazy, but my tour manager's really good, and it's going very smooth so far.
You've told me before the interview began that this you were here 6 years ago. What has changed for you in that time?
I'm not sure. A lot has changed for me. I think for the most part, I moved from New York to California to Los Angeles, and that was a big move. And the career it's been good. It's been steady growth, lots of touring. But yeah, I think the biggest change was moving, from New York to California.
How did that affected your musical career, your musical production?
I think it was more, in the writing process, not so much the career, but like, moving to a totally new place and, having to like set up all the equipment again and then like, find the comfort level to be able to write. It took a long time for me to like get my studio back together and like, in a way that I felt very comfortable to write. But, over the last year and a half is like when it finally, kind of clicked. So it took a while.
This year you've released your Iteration album after a 5-year break. What can you tell us about it?
It's nice to finally release a record again. It took me a long time, like I said, to get the studio together, and I went through a long period of this having, I would say like a creative block, trouble writing. I just, I think for me what it was I just got really bored of sitting on the computer for so long, because before music I worked in advertising, and I just feel like I've been in front of the computer for like 13 years, and I'm just, it was, and in California the weather's so nice, it's hard to be inside. So I think that was a big change. I really had to force myself to like remember, my discipline from like when I worked in advertising, and just kind of try to make a schedule and stick to it every day. And I just, as far as the music is concerned, I think that the music has, it just has more air in it. I think a lot of that comes from the software that I use. Had a major update, and I just think there's more room.
What kind of software do you use?
I write and record everything in Ableton, and then I sequence everything in Reason. And Reason had a big update, and the final output of the music comes out of Reason. So I really feel like the sound engine in Reason changed a lot with that update, and I just think it's not so dense and compressed. I think the music is a little bit lighter and a little more thought out as far as not throwing everything in it, everything in the kitchen sink. Just kind of I took my time with it, definitely.
I know that you have a story for each album, a sci-fi concept. I know the concept with the guy who goes to Wave One planet, but I want to know the story behind the concept.
I'm a very visual person, and I love films, and I worked in advertising, so I'm always designing, making art in that kind of way. But I think the story behind it, it's basically, for me, it was a way to stay on track, kind of keep everything cohesive. But I think it really just helps me kind of focus on keeping it all cohesive. So like and we never got too different or too strange, or and it's that story. It's based on that story, loosely. I never put that story out to people like you have to, this song means this, and you have to feel, a certain way. I think it's still, my music is open to interpretation. But yeah, I mean, and there's the other things that drive the music too. Like my childhood, family vacations, and I think of that stuff to get kind of the mood of the story that I kind of made. But yeah, it was a loose story.
I wanted to ask you about your childhood and your, I don't, the music that your parents used to listen when you were a kid, and how did that influence your career and the choices that you make musically?
You know, my dad, he wasn't that big into music. Mom, she always was listening to music. You know, they had, you know, Billy Joel and Michael Jackson, Culture Club, you know, Bobby Brown, just very random stuff. You know, and it's weird how it impacted me. You know, I wasn't into it. You know, when I was young, I was like, "What is this stuff?" You know, and you know, I used to scratch the you know their vinyl records on a turntable that you're not supposed to scratch on. You know, I had no slip mat, so I scraped all the records up. And
I did that too.
so they were not happy. But when my mom was pregnant with me, she went to a Culture Club concert, you know, with the, so yeah, I think that's had some weird impact on me, you know. But yeah, it wasn't until, I mean, my mom, growing up, she played piano. She used to play piano. She would always play for me and my sister.
You had the piano in your house, I know.
Yep. But I was never that musical. My sister was growing up. I played a lot of sports, and she, you know, she just kind of gravitated. She learned the piano, and then, you know, learned to play the guitar, and you know, used to do kind of singer-songwriter. It wasn't until much, you know, till about high school when I kind of fell in love with music. As far as, you know, I started, you know, to be a DJ. I got turntables for Christmas, and like, you know, just kind of started that way, and then started to write my own stuff. But yeah, growing up, it was what my parents listened to. Now I love, you know, I listen to a lot of Billy Joel and you know, Supertramp and things like that. You know, it's interesting to see as you get older what, you know, what your tastes really are. You know.
What day-to-day events in your life influenced this album?
You know, I try to keep the day-to-day stuff out. That's another reason that I made this story. I find that I have a really hard time translating my immediate feelings into a song. Whenever I try to, I really don't like the way it sounds or the way it comes out. And I find that I can take inspiration from that moment, but really I tend to write about things that happen now much later, you know, because it takes me a while to process situations and experiences, you know, for the good ones and the bad ones. It takes me a while to really, I don't know, kind of soak the feeling in. So, you know, it's definitely in there. There's no denying that it's just inevitably going to creep its way in. That, you know, but you know, it's always been hard for me to, like, if I have a breakup with a girl, like, it's very hard to write a song about it, you know, immediately. I definitely am driven to write music from situations that are in the, you know, in the now, but you know, really kind of focusing on an exact thing, you know, or situation is pretty difficult for me. Yeah.
Before doing synthwave, you've been a DJ playing drum and bass and making some drum and bass songs. Why did you change? Because it's very different as music, drum and bass from synthwave.
You know, I did drum and bass for a long time, and I just I got really bored with just like having to constantly, like, do new techniques, all the new techniques, and everybody was like, it felt like I was racing, and I really forgot to enjoy the music. And you know, I really, you know, I heard Boards of Canada one day, and I just that made me really miss, like, you know, lots of melody and making beautiful, you know, melodies. And that was like when I stopped. I still listen to drum and bass. I definitely appreciate it still. But yeah, it's just it's hard to write. I think it's very hard to produce. You know.
Drum and bass music.
Yes. Yeah.
Right now, you are working on something else or just music?
Just music. Yep. I think you know, after this, you know, in 2018, I'm going to take a little break, and I want to start designing again. You know, I'd really like to, you know, do some projects. You know, so maybe I'll give it a try again.
How will you define your music?
You know, I call it synthwave for the most part. You know, I had that used to call it, you know, as a more elaborate term. I called it mid-fi synthwave slow motion funk. But you know, as the years go by, and you know, trying to explain what it is trying to simplify it. You know, it's like when I get in a taxi to go to the airport, at home, and the driver's like, "Oh, are you a musician? You have all these cases, and I'm like, "Yeah," and he's like, "Oh, what's your, what kind of music is it?" And you say synthwave to a person, and they're, "What's synthwave?" So I just, I started to kind of say it's kind of down tempo electronic music, in its simplest form. I think that's a good way to explain it. And then I, kind of usually go into, it's got a little bit of the 80s sound to it. I collect a lot of vintage drum machines and synthesizers, and they're like, then they get it. But to just call it synthwave to just a random person, they're like, what is synthwave?
What's the secret of your success?
Lots of coffee. No secret. Like I said, this was totally unexpected for me to tour the world, I guess, and to do this for a living. I'm still every day I pinch myself, it's kind of crazy. I got very lucky, very, very lucky, because it's hard to make it, and I've done music, as my full-time job for 7 years now, so it's pretty crazy.
What do you want to achieve as an artist?
I don't know. This year's been crazy. I would like to score a film, definitely. I'd like to score some films and do some sound design work. That's kind of what I'm geared towards. Touring is, for touring for 7 years has kind of taken its toll. It's a little tiring, but yeah, I'd really like to score films and maybe do some production for other artists, pop music, whatever, anybody. I'd like to give it a try, but I definitely want to work in the film industry for a little while. There's been some opportunities, but it's like every time the opportunity comes up, I'm on tour. So it's like I need to, next year I'm gonna stay home for a little while and see what happens.